the next wave, it's going to be the real beginning of the blockchain-based games.
Again, we have amazing on Yavin, who is a super cool crypto enthusiast and amazing investor, venture capital investor in Web3 field, very much focused on gaming, metaverse, and play to earn token economies, and of course, doing a lot of great stuff for the industry itself. So hi on, welcome back.
Hi, Nelly, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be interviewed by you again.
Thanks a lot. And before we go to particular questions that we didn't have time to touch on our previous interview, and also I received a lot of questions to you after our interview, I want you to update us with your core focus at Cointelligence Fund. As I remember, it was focused specifically on gaming startups with play-to-earn economies. Did anything change? Because recently I hear a lot from VCs that they're getting tired of from gaming sector.
So it's a great question, and yeah, before I answer the question, I'll say that I don't need to introduce myself. You already did that, but I will say that yeah, I'm the managing partner at Cointelligence Fund, and we are completely focused on the metaverse and blockchain-based games. To answer your question, absolutely yes. First of all, we are in the midst of some kind of a crypto winter, in my opinion. It's started around January. Prices dropped. We had a crash for many different coins and tokens, not just for gaming projects in general, and specifically gaming projects, coins and tokens. And beside that, yes, we've seen so many new projects in, let's say, a period time of 2 to 3 months, maybe 4 months. I think that we saw at Cointelligence Fund hundreds of different decks. I'm not saying that we carefully reviewed all of them, because most of them we rejected and passed on. After a few minutes, we realized that it's very, very low level, and there's no chance that we will be investing. But we did do due diligence, proper due diligence for dozens of different projects only this year. And I can tell you that the first reason is that too many projects, as I mentioned, are very low level. It was obvious that the founders of these projects just wanted to jump on the hype train and try to raise funds while everybody is completely hyped about the play to earn concept and the new phenomena of blockchain-based games that are mainly based on the NFT craze. And I think it's actually a good thing that the industry is relaxing this time. And I think, yes, too many projects, too many copy-paste projects that are just trying to copy-paste, for example, Axie Infinity, still the leader of the blockchain-based games industry, even though there are huge, massive attacks on Axie Infinity by the community. And I'm talking about a lot of the crypto community in general, not just the gaming community or the crypto gaming community. And I think that we will see the second wave. I don't know when. I don't know if it's going to happen in a few months from now, or maybe next year, or maybe later. But we'll definitely see a second wave and a second huge hype that will be coming again.
You mean around crypto gaming startups, right?
Yes, yes, absolutely. I am sure that what we've seen until now was the pre-beginning, was the diapers phase. And I think that with the next wave, it's going to be the real beginning of the blockchain-based games.
Okay, well, I'm never capable to keep the proper structure with the questions that I planned to ask, but since you touched yourself the topic of Axie Infinity, look, recently I was talking to some gaming leagues, gaming guilds that are actively playing all these crypto gaming projects, and all of them told me, Axie has horrible tokenomics, absolutely unbalanced. And when the market was crazy bullish, the gamers were able to earn a lot and the token grew. But since the market is stagnating, they earn less and less every day. And right now, well, I'm not familiar with Axie team personally, but the guilds say that Axie team is reconsidering the tokenomics, the game economy and everything to make it more balanced. So do you know as an investor how to identify where is the balanced economy in a gaming project?
Absolutely, yes. But I have to tell you that in general, it's very early. And just to wrap up the specific Axie Infinity topic, I have to emphasize that I have huge respect to the Axie Infinity team. We have to remember that they are an industry leader. They did something that nobody did before them. Maybe others did it, but we don't know about it because they did it and they made themselves a brand, made themselves a name. And I have huge respect for that. It's very easy for everyone to criticize Axie Infinity while they were the ones that the pioneers and they were the ones that that pretty much started it all. But yes, the token economics are not proper. The token economics failed, and exactly as you said, during the bull it was great, and after that it was horrible. I can tell you that so many people bought the Axie Infinity characters, the in-game characters, through the NFT marketplace that Axie Infinity is managing, and they lost huge amounts of money. We're talking about people that bought characters for thousands of dollars, which are now worth maybe hundreds, just as an example. But on the other hand, you can say that maybe it was some kind of a correction, as people many times talk about when the Bitcoin price crashes, for example. They say, no, it's not a crash. It's not something wrong in the industry or something wrong with Bitcoin specifically. It's a good correction because the price went through the roof. It was too high, and it's not relevant and not realistic at all. So maybe some people will look at what happened with Axie as a correction, but going back to the pure token economics, of course it failed. And we have to remember that token economics, proper token economics, need to make sure, the system must make sure that all the participants in the system are being rewarded as they should be rewarded in a proper way, in a constant way, without fearing that at some point they will lose most of what they achieved and what they got. And just to give you a few examples, so if it's the investors, it's easy. The investors are investing, especially the early stage investors, and they're expecting high returns. And you can analyze that very easily and to see if the investors are happy or not happy. You have the team members that are working hard on the project, and they should be rewarded mostly or exclusively with the tokens of the project. And if the token price completely crashes and they're not able to sell it for a proper price, then they're not going to be happy. They're not going to be happy to continue working on the project. If we talk about everyone that are a part of the ecosystem, if it's the players, if it's the community members that are doing different things. I'm not referring to Axie specifically, I'm talking in general right now, but for example, everything around the staking mechanisms. So if everything is not working well and it doesn't make sense financially, it's no brainer, it's a failure. That's the bottom line. Now, beside that, we have to remember probably the most important thing before everything that I just mentioned. We have to remember that we're talking about games. We have to remember that we're talking about games that we are wishing for them to succeed on all parts, not just the crypto part, but also the game part. Up until now, the biggest attack on Axie Infinity, beside the fact that it's a Ponzi scheme, and beside the fact that, by the way, I'm not saying it, absolutely not. And beside that, we also see the biggest attack is it's not a real game. You can just put, you can just use a bot to play Axie Infinity, and you will get the rewards that you can get from achieving the different quests, and even if you fight in the PvP mode, player versus player, even then you can win if you just keep pressing the same button all the time. So what's the point? That's not considered to be a real game. These are the biggest attacks on Axie Infinity.
Exactly. And that is why, well, maybe it will be proper to separate these two topics, token economy and the game itself, because speaking about games, a lot of guilds also are complaining that it's simply not interesting to play. And they think that the crypto-friendly or play to earn games of the future next years should be different. First of all, they should be focused on mass adoption, attracting traditional gamers to the game and making it super cool and addictive. And second, the play to earn concept should be changed to play and earn concept, because economy can work only when somebody is also spending money to play this game. So what do you think of this?
So I completely agree with it, and I think that there are founders of some crypto projects that already realized it and already are acting to make sure that the game will be solid as a game, and not only to attract the players that all they care about is making money, or to attract players that are not going to be real players. And beside that, we have to also remember, and that's another thing that I know that bothers a lot of the guilds that you mentioned, is that we don't have too many games that you can actually play right now. And even if there are games that you can play, they're not advanced enough, similar to traditional games. And I'm not just talking about the graphics and the visuals. I'm talking about the gameplay. I'm talking about, we've seen so many games or potential games that don't really have a solid story or a solid basis for the game itself, beside, again, either if it's a copy paste from another game or it's just very, very poorly made. We have to remember that the successful games, the traditional successful games out there, just to develop them cost tens up to hundreds of millions of dollars overall for the different versions and expansions of the games and so on and so on. And absolutely, the criticism is right. But as I mentioned before, we're not even at the beginning. In my opinion, we're at the pre-beginning, and we've had too much of a huge hype going on last year. And I think that people thought that we're already there, but we're not yet. Don't even get me started on the different integration into the different blockchains. Don't even get me started on the fact that there's not even one blockchain that actually proved itself to be completely solid for games. There are a few potential blockchains that are very, very promising, but we have to remember that they don't really exist for too long of a time. And even if they do, maybe 1, 2, 3 of them, they still didn't prove themselves yet. I'm not saying that they won't, but they still didn't prove themselves yet.
Mm-hmm. I guess you mean Solana and others who are super popular by game developers, but very younger, so that we could assess if they work really or not, right?
As much as you know me as someone that loves to name names, I'm not going to name the names of the blockchains that are not good enough. but I'm telling you that I think that it's fine, because again, we're at a very early stage, and it's really fine, and we'll have to be patient and see how things are progressing in the next few years.
Okay, then coming back to the tokenomics part or token economics, how do you, since it is pre-beginning of the game era in crypto, how do you as investor assess the tokenomics of the crypto gaming startup? I mean, not just metrics about, vestings, cliffs, etc., but also how do you understand if this or that token economy is balanced or not?
So it's a super, super difficult and deep topic, and I'll try to explain it in a few words, but it's really, really complicated. So the way that I see it, first of all, we have to remember that there's a relationship between the different participants. And if we are focusing right now on, for example, the players that are playing the game, the most difficult part is that it's all connected. So you can't separate the token economics that was built specifically for the gamers themselves, and what happens if they do that, what happens if they do this, and how are they being rewarded, and so on and so on. We have to remember that it will influence everything that's happening in that ecosystem. So when we start analyzing the token economics, we always start from the player's point of view, but we have to make sure that we don't miss the other participants, or to be more accurate, we make sure that the founders of the project didn't miss when they were planning it, or if they planned it themselves, or if they planned it with other professionals, we make sure that they didn't miss that specific part, which is extremely important. The second most important part is to make sure that it will make sense to play the game, to earn while planning, and going back to what we discussed before, to make sure that it's going to be lucrative enough for a player to keep playing the game and to earn from it. Because if the currency itself is not worth anything, then why would the player want to continue playing if their goal is to earn money? If it's not worth enough for their time, they will just stop. One of the biggest examples that we looked at, one of the investments that we made, is that we calculated how much the players actually might be able to profit from playing the game. And what I just said now is so basic. Most of the investors actually miss that part, and they're not even calculating that. Don't even get me started on the investors that are not checking token economics or can't even understand token economics, but that's beside the point now. You have to make sure that it makes sense for the player to make money. And I'm saying again, it doesn't matter right now if the player is playing the game because he likes the game and he wants to play it, or because he's playing it to make money. That's not the point right now. For both cases, it has to make sense to play the game to make money, either from completing the regular quests, or from PvP, or from playing the game up until a certain point where the player just decides to sell his or her characters and or in-game items. The third part, I would say, is to make sure that the token economics is built in a proper way that will reward the participants that are taking part in the ecosystem. And I'm not talking about players now. We're talking about the community members. So it's very well known that if you have anything that is based on a DAO, then you have different participants. And if you're a token holder, you can also participate in the different votes, for example. You can vote. You can take part in the voting. So if you're not going to be rewarded enough, and it's not going to be beneficial for you to be active within the ecosystem, and that's another part where many of the token economic schemes are completely failing, these people will not continue to be a part of the ecosystem, which means that the ecosystem will not be sustainable. So we have to make sure that that actually makes sense. And just to give you an example that will be similar but not similar at all, it's just for people to understand better what I'm referring to. And if you look at the rewards that the Bitcoin miners are getting for mining Bitcoin, and you know how many times it was said that if it's not going to be profitable enough for them, they will stop the mining operations. If they stop the mining operation, there's not going to be a Bitcoin network, a proper Bitcoin network. So that is like the example of what I explained now. But I'm telling you again, it's completely different. It's different systems. I don't want anyone to think that I'm making the comparison between this to make it look like it's the same. It's not. It's just for the sake of the educational explanation. Now, beside these examples that I gave you now, these parts of the token economics, we have to make sure, and this is where it becomes super tricky. We have to make sure that everything that I just mentioned now is connected to the fundraising token economics. And one of the biggest mistakes that founders are doing is when they are separating that in their mind as if token economics for fundraising is a standalone, the token economics for the game itself is a standalone, and even if they're connected in some way, they're not heavily connected, or they're not influencing each other very significantly. That's a huge mistake. It's very much connected, and if you don't take care of the connection between them, you're doomed to be failing, without any doubt. And again, it goes back to what I was saying before. If your investors are not going to be happy, then you're going to have a problem as well. So if you're influencing the fundraising token economics after you did the fundraising and your investors are not going to be happy from their investments, you can be considered a failure, even if the game is amazing and even if the players are happy. So you can realize that this is so complicated and so problematic, and it's not surprising that most of the projects are failing with this. Even if they really try their best. One, no one has enough experience with token economics. There are no token economics experts out there. There are potential token economics experts. They didn't have enough time, they didn't have enough projects to see what works and what doesn't work. And by the way, it's not just about gaming, it's the entire crypto industry. Most projects failed until today. Most of them, I'm talking about 95% plus failed. I'm not even talking about the scams. I'm not even talking about the bullshit projects. I'm talking about the ones that did good work and actually developed well, but they completely failed with their token economics, and that's why the project failed. And to wrap up everything that I was saying, I will say the following, and this will be an advice to the founders that are listening to us, that are watching us. Even if you're sure 1000% that you're a token economics expert, that you know better than anyone else out there, that's fine. Do it yourself. But always, always, always take advice of people that had the most experience with token economics. Hire advisors. I'm not talking about hiring advisors in general for the product. Hire advisors specifically for the token economics process. Hire experts to help you. And I'm saying again, it's fine if you want to do it yourself, but you need to make sure that you're not making mistakes. So it's always best to have at least 2 to 3 experts or potential experts, people with heavy experience, with very, very, very serious experience for a few years at least, that will audit the token economics that you prepared yourself and or will help you design, and not just wait until you're finished with it and then ask them to review it. And on top of all of that, make sure that you take money from investors, at least a few of them, that actually understand token economics, and don't just rely on the fact that they are telling you that they understand token economics. Make sure that they actually understand that. And again, I'll give you another tip. Talk to other founders. Ask other founders that investors worked with how they help them, if they actually help them with the token economics, and don't just take yes for an answer. Ask for specifics, because sometimes people will say yes because they just don't understand what they're being asked, or because they don't want to spend time on answering in depth, or because they don't understand themselves. So make sure that you get the proper answers with specifics and not just the yes, no general answers. I think that's the basics and the most important parts about token economics. Obviously, we need a few hours to dive in deeper, but we won't have the time today.
Yeah, I agree. It's endless topic, and more important is that you said there are no experts, complete experts in tokenomics. Everyone is learning, and it is changing so fast that you need to learn continuously and make these 2 hours interviews once per month at least to be on track, right?
Absolutely. Actually, Nelly, I want to add one more thing about the token economics before we move on to another topic, and that's the legal part. We also have to remember that token economics are heavily affecting the legal status of the operations. And everybody knows that the biggest difference, the most significant difference is between a security token and a utility token. Okay, fine. Everybody in the industry should already understand that. But we have to remember that the specifics of the token economics can affect if it's a security or a utility. And beside the specific of the token economics, if it's a utility or a security, we also have to make sure that the founders really understand that it has legal implications directly towards them. And sometimes founders don't understand something that is extremely important. Founders are always at the highest risk, legal-wise, when it comes to getting in trouble with the regulators, with the lawmakers, with the governments, and so on and so on. Investors will not get in trouble. And sometimes founders listen to investors, but the investors they just don't care because they can't get in trouble. So what do they care? They will give the advice to the founders. They can't get in trouble for it. So it's very important to listen to your investors, especially the knowledgeable and experienced investors, but always remember that it's not the same. You have to look out for yourselves, and I'm talking about the founders, and you have to make sure that you don't get in trouble because advice that you're getting from others, including your investors.
Mm-hmm. And hire your lawyers, yeah, good lawyers, not just rely on information from the internet.
Absolutely, and it's not just to hire lawyers, and you're saying it, but I think that it's very important to emphasize it because what you said now is so true. Too many founders are relying on free internet sources and download different agreements, and it's fine to make sure that you don't have a big burn rate and you minimize your expenses as much as possible. I wouldn't recommend minimizing the expenses when it comes to legal at all. I think that when you're fundraising, make sure that you have enough money to pay serious and professional lawyers. And I would highly recommend to hire at least 2 different law firms, maybe even 3 different law firms, because I've seen lawyers that call themselves crypto lawyers professionals that don't have a clue on crypto regulation. And even if they do, they have a clue on a specific jurisdiction. And with crypto, it's not enough. We have to remember that with crypto, we're global, that with crypto, it's not just one jurisdiction. And even if you block investors from a specific jurisdiction, like most of the projects are blocking American investors because the Americans are at the highest risk towards the founders, we have other jurisdictions that can be very problematic as well in Europe and other places in the world. And I advise to be very, very, very cautious about that. And to add to what I said, if you're creating a DAO, it doesn't mean that you're protected from the regulators. Stop thinking that a DAO will solve your problems. It's not going to solve your problems because right now, as we speak, most of the founders of DAOs are at the highest risk with regards to regulation. I think that it's very important to consult with the right legal advisors. And as I mentioned, I think that it's very important to hire more than one legal advisor just to make sure that you're not getting false advice.
I think after watching this interview, a lot of DAO founders will be in panic because what you said is exactly hitting them. All those who were thinking that DAO structure is a kind of protection. Since it is not regulated, they can't be put in jail. And that is not true.
So it's absolutely wrong. And we already see the SEC went after decentralized exchanges, at least as a matter of investigation. I'm not just talking about indictment, but nobody wants to be investigated by the SEC. And I am highly recommending founders to take the proper legal advice and definitely don't think the DAO is going to protect you. It's actually on the exactly the other way around. Actually, and I'm saying it again, just to be clear, every founder of every DAO needs to be very, very cautious and need to understand that they are at the highest risk at the moment because there is a high chance that the SEC and other regulators will decide that it's violating securities laws. And the DAO is not a mechanic that helps them avoid it. And unless they register the fundraising for the project and other mechanisms in the project itself as securities, they might get in serious trouble.
Mm-hmm. Thanks a lot for elaborating this. I think I will put big alarm in the video design here to put more attention to this part. Coming back to gaming projects and their economics, you mentioned the situation when there are 2 tokens, tokens for investors and for fundraising and tokens for in-game economy. Just a couple of days ago, I was on a meeting with a few investors, crypto investors, and they were disputing. Some of them were saying that any gaming startup should have 2 tokens, and VC investors receive this governance type of tokens used for fundraising. And for the normal regular gamers, they should have another token. Others said that no, that is not true, and 1 token is enough for all the utilities, including fundraising, governance, in-game economy, and everything. Do you have any idea what is right or wrong or whatever?
Absolutely. So first of all, I think that it's not one thing that is relevant for all the projects. I think that we'll see differences between the different projects. Beside that, I think that there is a very serious benefit for having a specific token for the fundraising and having a specific token for the as the in-game token. And for example, if I mentioned before the utility versus the security, so if you're having a security token for the fundraising and a utility token for the in-game as the in-game token, that it can make a lot of sense. But it doesn't necessarily mean that it's a must. It doesn't mean that it has to be this way. And also, there is a lot of benefit for having two different types of tokens. And I'm not just talking about the fundraising versus the in-game token. I'm talking about even if you take the ecosystem and you divide it by two, and you have two different in-game tokens, that each of them are being supported by different actions that are happening, and the price can be influenced by different actions that are being taken by the different participants. I think it can make sense, but I don't think that it's like there's no standard. Again, it's way too early now, but even if it wasn't too early, I am guessing that even when we talk in a few years from now, I will probably say the same thing, that it's not going to be a standard that fits every project. And I think that one token can work and two different tokens can work. Maybe we'll even see projects that are having more than two different types of tokens, because again, it's crypto and we don't know what will happen tomorrow. And maybe when we talk next year, it's going to be a completely different ball game as well. Now, just to add one more thing with regards to what you mentioned before, again, it all depends on the person that is claiming what they're claiming. We have to remember it. Lawyers will emphasize the legal part. Economy people will emphasize the economics part. Obviously, you always have to find the bridge between everything, and that's another reason that it makes the token economics so difficult and so hard to create, at least a proper one. And when we listen to the advice of that specific person on that specific person, we also have to make sure that we understand where they're coming from and why they are saying the advice that they're saying. And we have to remember that people rely mostly on their personal experience, and it's very important to understand what kind of personal experience they've had until the day of the advice.
Mm-hmm. And speaking about different types of people involved, you mentioned that the founders, while building the economy, they should think about gamers, about investors, about community members, so at least three different types of stakeholders. There are also game guilds who are the fourth type of the stakeholders, and I think with different mindset than the regular gamers, for example. Are there any other types of stakeholders around crypto-friendly gaming startup that the founder should think about?
So it's not related to the gaming, to the crypto gaming space specifically, in my opinion. I think that it's relevant for most of the crypto projects out there, but we also have to remember that we have the different participants that I mentioned before. If it's token holders that are staking the tokens, if we have traders, let's also remember that we have crypto traders, and they don't care about the game itself or the project itself. All they care about is trading the project's coin or token. And we also have the different participants, as I mentioned before, like the different team members, the different advisors, the community members, the people that are taking action not in the game itself, but outside the game itself, or if they take the action within the game and outside the game. And on top of all of that, we definitely have, as you mentioned, we have the guilds, which are starting to take a significant part in the operations, and both as investors and as managing the players' communities. But one can say that the guilds are actually a combination of investors and players, and it's the same that applies to the investors and the game, the players that I addressed before. I think that's about it. That sums it up.
Mm-hmm. Okay, then coming back to you as typical representative of the investor part of the community around crypto project, you mentioned that during your decision-making process, you analyze not only token metrics, but also in-game tokenomics and calculate, for example, how much the player can earn more or less. When you are doing this, I'm wondering, can you do it for each and every project that you have in your pipeline? Because, for example, when I meet a lot of gaming startups recently, some of them don't know, even founders don't know how much the player can earn or not, because they did not calculate it. So how you can calculate in this case as an investor?
So first of all, it's important to note that by the time that we get into the token economics, it's one of the last stages of our due diligence process. And before that, we make sure that we're actually interested in the project and we would like to invest in it because of all the other different reasons that we are reviewing, if it's the team, if it's the execution, if it's before the execution, of course, the vision, the concept, and if it makes sense, if it's everything around the plans of the founders with regards to the marketing and much more. The capabilities of the founders or the developers and so much more. So it's not like we're doing it for every project that we're looking at. We're doing it only for the projects that actually passed the initial 2 phases at our due diligence process. Having said that, we when we analyze it in a way that we analyze it if it's possible. Let's remember that there are projects that it's impossible to do it for them because they are in a very early stage and it doesn't make sense to do it at that stage. We can rely on the potential of what we see. In other cases, they do have the full token economics scheme and we are able to do it. And in both cases, it will influence our decision a lot with regards to the investment. And by the way, I think that at the next wave that I mentioned at the beginning of this interview, I think that the token economics will be in a different level. I think that you can see that the industry is evolving. You can compare now the fundraising for different projects compared to the ICO craze time. And it shows without any doubt that the progress, that the industry progressed so much since then. I'm talking about the craze that we had in 2017, 2018. And it's pretty obvious to me that it will continue to progress and evolve in a pretty good way. By the way, specifically with crypto gaming projects, we're already seeing projects that are not raising funds. And we have been seeing that for the last few months, not just raising funds on presentations and theories, but raising funds on an alpha or beta of a game that they actually developed. Some of them are actually playable. I know because I actually play the games as a part of the due diligence process, which makes this so much fun. And yeah, I think that it will definitely evolve. But in some cases, we are actually able to calculate everything. In some of these cases, we surprised the founders when we did the calculations, of course, and we made them think or rethink the entire token economics that they plan. But it's not always easy, and it's not always possible.
Mm-hmm. Then coming back to your own priorities, so you mentioned yourself there are so many gaming projects that are passing your table, and majority of them you don't even start due diligence. You pass on them few steps before. So what in the project highlights, in the first intro message that you see about startup, how to ensure that it will turn you on? What do you want to see? Something significant? I mean, should it be traction? Should it be ready product? Should it be some excellent team from the unicorns in past?
So, like any startup, it always starts with the team. That's the most important part. If it's not a solid team, there's no way that we would be investing, that we will be investing. And just to clarify, let's define a solid team for a blockchain-based gaming project. First of all, you have the regular type of team that you would look into when you're analyzing any startup. You want to see that the team has the experience, the knowledge. Obviously, if the team is experienced with other projects before that, then definitely it's a plus, not mandatory, but a huge plus. And with regards to crypto gaming, we have to remember that it's not just analyzing the team similar to traditional projects. It's also with regards to their experience with blockchain development. It's also with regards to their experience or knowledge with regards to token economics. It's also with regards to specifically crypto marketing. So we always start with the team. After that, we either check what they already developed, or if it's let's say an alpha or a beta version of the game. But even if they don't have that, what they actually developed until now. And yeah, we actually look at the GitHubs, for example, and to see and to make sure that they have the level that is needed to create such a project. Beside the team, we move on to the execution of everything that they did. If it's the white paper, the deck, and I'm not even talking about what's in it. It's about what they did and how it looks. With regards to, for example, everything around, I mentioned before, the legal part, if they were actually serious enough to take the proper legal advice, and the list is long, and we're checking many different things for the initial phase before we dive in and analyze it much deeper.
And how important for you are other investors on cap table? Do you follow those big names from the industry who already entered the project, or you don't care at all?
So obviously having the big names is potentially can help, but it's definitely the last thing that we will be looking at when we consider everything overall. And the reason that I'm saying that is, first, it's unbelievable how many investors are looking at the big names and then they make a decision, yeah, we're going to invest. Sometimes we have to remember that with the big names, they're not as thorough as the smaller ones because they became too big already. And we have to remember that when the big names are doing the due diligence, it's mainly being done by the junior employees and not the executives. Even if the executives are reviewing the report and making the final decision, they, in some of the cases, are not a part of the due diligence process itself, and it can influence. Beside that, you can just check the market and see. There are so many projects that had the big names and completely failed until now. So having the big names is definitely not a guarantee and not a promise for a successful token launch or a successful project at all.
Mm-hmm. Okay, then you don't like name dropping, but let's use this chance since not only founders, but also investors will be watching this video. Maybe you can name some really good projects from your portfolio where you invested in and that could become next year or even this year some big stars in the sector, or examples of the projects with really well-defined, well-balanced token economy.
So the only reason that I will not do that is because it will mean that I'm promoting our projects. So I don't want to name names.
But it's good that you promote your projects, no? It's an interest of you. It's an interest of your projects. Yeah, founders will be extremely happy and grateful if you promote them. And those investors who will be watching this video, for them, it's the deal flow sharing. They can learn about new potential opportunities.
Okay, that's fine. So I think that we have some of our portfolio companies that had proper token economics and promising token economics and promising projects in general. I would say that Decimated is definitely one of them. The second project I would say is Rebelbots. that is very promising. The third project would be Snoop, and the fourth project would be Megafence, one of our latest investments. The last example that I would like to give would be the Creo project. So it's just it's a project that we just signed a few days ago. It's not even published on our portfolio page now. Everything else that I mentioned is updated on our portfolio page, but that's a very promising project, specifically with regards to the token economics and in general as well. So these are the examples that I can give.
Thank you for naming this, Ona. We will definitely put the websites of these projects in the description of this interview, and maybe it will help them to rise even higher or attract very good investors and partners after this interview.
And let's remember that anything that I'm saying is not considered financial advice.
Absolutely no financial advice, no investment advice, and no legal advice. Please keep this in mind, all those from SEC who are watching us.
Exactly.
Okay, since your battery is going down, I guess, the last question for today on, can you just describe, maybe in some absolutely hallucination way, how do you envision the crypto gaming sector in a couple of years? Since you said it is pre-beginning, what it will look like? Will it be only metaverse everywhere, or how do you see it yourself?
So I think that the metaverse is so potentially huge that it's going to be so difficult, but we have to remember that the metaverse is not a new thing. We already have metaverses, specifically and mainly games metaverses that's been around for a very long time. What I would like to see is first and foremost, the gaming projects becoming solid games that players actually want to play. That's the first and foremost important thing that has to happen, because some of the blockchain-based games are really, really horrible. The graphics and visuals are horrible. The gameplay is horrible, and that needs to be completely changed. Otherwise, there's not going to be mass adoption for blockchain-based games, and this is not going to succeed. The second part, we talked about a lot, everything around the token economics. I don't need to mention it again. The third part is about the fact that, and it starts with the fundraising. Make sure that you have enough funds to build a serious game. It's not enough to have a small amount to build a serious game, and you have to remember that. Beside that, the founders of the projects, they must hire the right team members after they finalized the fundraising process or the initial fundraising process, and they have to hire the people with the right experience. So there are many people out there that have been working for the traditional gaming companies, and there are huge gaming companies out there with thousands of different employees. So there is talent and there is experience out there, but it costs a lot. So they have to be ready to pay the proper salaries for these employees that will be hired to the companies. Beside that, I think that people, and that's like the basics of the basics of the basics. And that's something that we see that is being missed so much with the blockchain-based games. It's not just about the vision and the concept, it's also about the storyline. If you don't have the proper storyline, the players will not stick around. It's very simple, because, and I'm saying this as a gamer, and I've been playing games for many years. If it's not interesting enough, if it's not evolving, and if it just remains the same and it's boring, that the player will just stop playing at some point. You have to make sure that you make it interesting to the player. And there are good traditional games examples for that. And I think that the blockchain-based games founders, if they are themselves not gamers or don't have the right experience with the gaming industry, they need to start educating themselves before they even launch a project, and they need to see what's actually happening, either playing the games for a while, for a long while, or to actually live and breathe what's happening with the gaming world on a daily basis, because otherwise they can't succeed. And it's not enough if you're an amazing crypto person and you know everything about crypto. If you don't know about games, By the way, just a side note, just playing one game before in the past for like a couple of months or maybe a year or two doesn't mean that you really understand gaming. It doesn't. You need to play different types of games. You need to play different types of games in different types of eras of the gaming industry to really understand it, and to be able to manage a project like that of your own.
Okay, it was the last question, but now the last and a half, since you mentioned it. Right now, I see a lot of also traditional gaming startups entering crypto sector, yeah, implementing tokens in the already existing game with old schoolish traditional gameplay. Do you believe that this could be also a sweet spot for a venture capital investor like you, or there are some hidden risks in these kind of cases?
So I actually think it's great. I actually think that, and we've seen projects that that developed a game some time ago, and even if the game succeeded or did not succeed, they decided to implement everything around the blockchain and NFTs and integrate the blockchain or different blockchains. I think that's great. I think that it can actually work, especially if there's something that founders have been working on for many years. And again, even in cases that it didn't succeed back then, it might be completely changed or slightly changed, and then it might succeed. Obviously, there are also downsides, but I think that the upsides are bigger, and I think that it might be lucrative, and definitely taking a game that already succeeded as a traditional game and just to add the crypto part to it, that's not a brainer. I mean, that can definitely potentially work. And I think it can be beneficial, and we're very much into it and not against it.
Did you invest in any of these?
Up until now, I don't think that we made even one investment like that. I'm not sure. I don't want to, because I just don't remember. I need to go over the portfolio and to make sure. But I can tell you that probably, even if we didn't invest in such a game, probably we will be investing in these projects, the ones that already had an existing game and change it into crypto.
Got ya. Okay, as promised, we're finishing for today. Thanks so much for your wisdom and experience sharing. I wish you a lot of unicorns on your portfolio, and of course, looking forward to meet you in our next meetings.
The pleasure was mine. Thank you very much. And I'm looking forward to our next one.
And for all those who are watching us today, I remember, please read the description under the interview. We will put the link to Cointelligence Fund website, and also spend your time at looking at Cointelligence main portal, because it is very, very good educational portal where you can learn a lot about this sector. Since On is very shy to self-promote himself, I have to do it today. Don't hesitate to click the link, go to Cointelligence and read the recent reports and the knowledge-based webinars, so on and so forth. Educate yourself, guys. Thank you very much for watching.